Hello everybody, hopefully you guys are having a good day. My name is Eddie and welcome back to the channel. I'm going to be doing another one of my stand-up videos where I go over a feature and my thought process while I was developing it. Hopefully you guys are liking these videos. If you do, give it a thumbs up. If you have any feedbacks or comments or things you want to see, leave them in the comments down below and subscribe so that you don't miss out on any future videos. Right. So let's just jump into it. We got a lot to talk about today. In our last video, we were connecting over to Kubernetes and starting to do API calls with the Kubernetes API to get information and start creating our dashboard. Here, all we did was we added some validation, and we just want to make sure that we are the user that Kubernetes configuration is meant for, right? We don't want to give out certificates and keys to servers that you're not authorized to get. So that was kind of important to add there. We moved some functionality out into their own utilities. So before, we would have all this code in that function that we were looking at before, but I just decided to move all of that, and that's just the part where we're creating the SSL context. I feel like we're going to be doing this a lot, so I wanted to move this out into its own function outside of our actual API code so that, you know, we could reuse it, and also it's not cluttering up our mental space while we're looking at our code. But this was all explained in the last video. All we're doing is creating a temp file and using it to create an SSL context that we could then use to connect to our API. We also moved out the requests that we're making. So here we have a get nodes function that we created, and it's just calling the nodes API in the kubectl. Like if you run kubectl get nodes, it's this stuff that you get out of it, right? So that is what we're getting out from there. We also added a describe nodes, which I'll explain in a little bit. And I don't know how this verify ended up in here. We're not using it, so I'm gonna remove it. Right, so we get our response from the Kubernetes API. We convert it over to JSON, and then we do some list comprehension on it. So this is gonna look pretty complicated, but I'll go over it really quickly. We have a list of objects that we're gonna get, right? So when we call this over to the API, what we're gonna get back is a whole bunch of data about all the nodes. We don't really need all of that. I just want the node name and whether the node is running. So what I do is dictionary comprehension, and it's going to be a list of dictionaries. And inside of that, we just get all of the items from our data, right? It's going to have a list of items, and we make them into this object called item. And then we have a node name, and I want to set that node name to the metadata name. And I could kind of show this off. Let's just do this, return data, right? And now all of our code is kind of useless, but we return data and we have all these items. Remove that metadata. But we have a list of items, and let's close a lot of this other stuff until we get to another metadata. Right, all right, there we go. So in one of them, we have Minikube, and in the other, we have our other node in the cluster, Minikube M2. And basically, we just want a bit of data from here. We want that, and I think in the status. Yes, in status, that's where we're going to get the next part we're going to talk about in this condition area. Right, so remove that out of there. In the status, what we're doing is kind of looping through that this status array. So for condition in item status conditions, and that is this right here. So for everything inside of here, I want you to loop. And if the condition type is ready and the condition status is equal to true, then I want it to be condition status. And if not, go to the next thing. I want you to be not ready. And basically what that's doing is it's looking for the type of ready, and it's making sure that it has a value of true. And if those two conditions are met, then we're going to give it the condition type, which is going to be ready, and that's going to be set to status. And for items and data, right, so we make our list, and if I return this now, if I return result and we send our query, now we have a list of all of our nodes in the cluster. So hopefully that makes sense. Next, we're going to create an empty list of pods, because now we want to do the fun stuff. We want to actually get information about our pods. So if I go here to our shell, kube ctl describe node minikube. What I'm going for is I kind of want to get this data and this data. I want to get this information so that I could start populating a dashboard with this kind of information. So what is it that I need to be able to do that? Well, I'm going to need all of the pods that are running on a node, and I'm going to have to do some stuff, right? Some math and algorithms to be able to compute the total of it, and also create a data structure that kind of holds all that information. So this is kind of, it's not done yet, so I'm probably going to finish it tomorrow. Getting kind of late, it's already 11, so I want to finish this up and get the video out there for today, and then tomorrow we'll finish this feature up. So we go through, well, we create a list of pods. So we want basically a record of all of our pods. And what I want inside of my list of pods is these pod objects here. And I really just want the name, how much CPU is it using, how much memory is it using, and what node is it on. So we have our second API call that we have here, describe nodes. It takes in those SSL contexts, so it's really nice that now we can just kind of pass that SSL context around. We're not building it over and over again with those temp files. We just create it and then we have it in memory and we can just keep using it. Our API URL and a node name, and then we make a call. We append this API URL, and that's just, if we look over here, that API URL right now it's hard-coded. Going to be an environment variable in the future, I'm sure. We're going to get it from the Kubernetes configuration, but for now, it's just the IP address of the server. And we're just making a call to the pods API route. So we're getting all the pods, but we're giving it a field selector, and that field selector is going to be the node that we're on. And then I don't want failed or succeeded pods. So any pod that finished its job and succeeded, I don't want them. And if they're failed and not running, I basically only want running pods. And just as a aside on how I kind of figured that out, if you do a v6 on a Kubernetes kubectl call, it's going to give you all of the API routes right here. And if you look here, this is exactly what they're doing right here, right? They're going, they're going pods, field selector with the node name, and then they put in the node name in there, and succeeded or failed. It's all right there. So if anyone else wants to kind of do this sort of work, that's how I did it. All right, cool. So we go and we make that API call, and that's going to give us a bunch of information. send that over here. Yeah, a lot of items, and these are all of our pods, information about the pods, and so on and so forth, right? So we want to loop through every single item. Now we're looping through every single pod. So now we have this pod thing. After looping through it, we're going to create an empty object, a kind of dummy object to start out, and we're going to start filling up that data. So the pod name, and we're just going through there and just getting the data bit by bit. You know, we go into the metadata, we go into the name field of that thing, and we just set it to the value of our kind of dummy object. We keep going down, we get the node name, and we append that to a actually list of pods. I don't think we should append here. That's very weird. Oh, I get what's going on. Right, because it kind of doesn't matter where we append, because we're not creating a new one, but we should append here. So let me just list of pods dot append pod object. Why is containers not defined now? Oh, I deleted 2 lines. Whoops. List of pods dot append pod object. And I've been doing too much JavaScript. I'm putting semicolons in Python. I've been doing it all day and it's driving me crazy. But so let's keep going. Let's keep trucking. We just create this containers to make it a little bit easier for us to loop. We set a total CPU and a total memory to 0, and this is just to keep a counter of that specific pod's memory and CPU usage. We loop through all the containers, and oh, I should explain kind of why we're doing this, because it tripped me up. So a pod can have sidecars and could have multiple actual containers inside of them. A pod isn't just one Kubernetes container. It could be more than one container. So we're going to need to, even though in our example right now, everything that I have out on my cluster is only one container, there is a possibility that it's multiple containers. So we're going to have to kind of add up and tally up all the CPU and memory between all the containers to get the actual usage of a single pod. So we loop through all the containers that are possibly on that pod, and we get the this field called the request. So I'm gonna just return requests. Not much in here, right? But it's just some CPU and some memory, right? And we get those and we set them to CPU and memory, and then we add them to our total and our total memory and total CPU. I do this little R strip here to remove the MI from there, right? You can see that there's an M here and an MI. I'm not going to be able to add up numbers with strings in them, so we take them out and we add them back in afterwards when we set them to our pod object. After everything is done, we add the pod to our list of pods, and right now that is where our API ends. What still needs to be done is now I need to tally up all of the CPU and memory usage for all of the pods here, and then create a total kind of view for our node, and then maybe a total view for our cluster to see how much resources we're actually using across the board on everything. But that is where I'm going to leave it here. It's getting kind of late. and I want to go and play some chess before I go to bed. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Like I said, put a thumbs up if you liked it. Leave a comment down below for any suggestions or anything that you'd like me to change. I do read them all. And subscribe so that you guys can see any future videos. See you later.